multiples in rating. So now we come to the next point, which is a question for oral answer to the Commission on the European Action Plan for the Social Economy. This is tabled by Mr. Nielsen and others, and I'll give Mr. Nielsen the floor first for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. In December 2015, the Council adopted conclusions on the promotion of the social economy and as a key driver of economic and social development in Europe. It was a reference point, and it was the first time that the member states adopted conclusions in the Council. And why is this? It's because they could see that there was potential in the sector. The social economy sector covers different types of enterprise models, cooperatives, as well as non-profit organizations, foundations, among others. All these organizations play an important role in achieving our European goals, and they should cover all member states. Moreover, this sector allows us to make sure that we have fair and sustainable growth for everyone. It's about social cohesion, innovation, environmental protection. And the social enterprise sector is not a small one. There are 2 million social economy enterprises that employ over 14.5 million people and account for 8% of EU GDP. The social economy activities mean that profits can be turned into investment. It's about the environment, it's about social aspects. This is vital because it means that a lot can be accomplished. It also allows us to set the right example because we're showing how we can face common challenges together. It also gives us quality jobs, social integration, as well as democratic values and principles underpinning economic activity. That's perhaps the most important aspect. This is something that the European Parliament has defended in the past in the European Pillar on Social Rights. This sector plays a significant role in many ways. In this way, we can promote social cohesion in democratic structures and rally people behind this. I used to be a mayor of my hometown, and I know it's extremely important to have cooperatives and to have volunteers and to have the will to set up the right local structures. I don't think it would be possible for local communities to do without social enterprises. For many communities, it's a strategic source of jobs. Many say that this sector has a stabilizing effect in market economy that is characterized by liberalism and isn't always as stable as we want it to be. I'd like to mention studies that have shown that this sector of the economy managed to overcome the crisis a lot more easily than others. Cooperative banks actually did a lot better despite the crisis, and this is reflected in these reports. In 2016, there was the Bratislava Declaration. There was a request put forward to the European Commission. And then, of course, we also have the Commission's expert group that called the Commission to develop a European action plan for the social economy. But these pleas will not turn into anything concrete if the Council didn't give the Commission the green light. In May 2017, a whole set of member states adopted the Madrid Declaration, and the European Commission again was called upon to develop an action plan. The aim is to boost this sector, and the aim is to promote social enterprise in Europe, and that is why it's extremely important. The European Economic and Social Committee published a report on those companies, on startups and scale-ups. And it's extremely important that this initiative and other initiatives shore up these companies. And I hope that we will finally have a social economy action plan. Many would like to see this sector play an active role in a Europe that grows, but in a continent that has to improve the living conditions of its citizens. The European Commission has to play a more important role than it has. So my question is, what can we do? What can the European Commission do? What can the Council do? And what can the Member States do in order to back these social economy enterprises? I have another question. Is the European Commission planning to draw up an action plan on the social economy? Thank you.
Berichterstatter, nun hat
Thank you, Rapporteur. Now on behalf of the Commission, I call Commissioner Jourova.
Madam President, honourable members, thank you for your question on the social economy. Clearly, this is a key issue to all of us. First, the Commission agrees with you on the importance of the social economy for Europe. Delivering on a more social and fair Europe is a key priority for the Commission. Earlier this year, we launched a reflection paper on Europe's social dimension and the pillar of social rights. This has started a process with citizens, social partners, the European institutions and governments to find responses to the challenges our societies and citizens face. These challenges require innovative social and economic models to deliver more growth and well-being in Europe. The social economy is a core part of this move. It combines solidarity with innovative answers to the societal challenges. It answers a growing demand among European entrepreneurs and consumers for a new way of doing business responsibly and sustainably. Social economy is not another economy. It is part of the wider economy. It makes sense to invest in it. So we want to see the sector succeed. We have been working with you and other stakeholders to promote the growth of the sector. Over the last years, we have taken several measures under our 2011 Social Business Initiative. We have encouraged Member States to develop favourable conditions for the social economy and social enterprises to grow. For instance, the social economy and social enterprises are priorities of the European Social Fund. But we also recognise that there is untapped potential and barriers which hamper the development of the sector in many countries. So we are continuing to develop and implement new measures. The expert group on social entrepreneurship issued some recommendations, and we are taking forward a number of them, such as increasing visibility, making funds more easily available, or enforcing and reinforcing the legal environment. And we have carefully analysed the different proposals presented in different EU political documents and intergovernmental declarations. As a result, we decided to launch a number of new actions to stimulate the development of the social economy. We announced these in our Start-up and Scale-up initiative last year. And it would be important that any future initiative after 2018, such as a Social Business Initiative 2, would be based on the evaluation of the situation after the current Start-up Scale-up initiative, would have been fully implemented. Our actions rest on 5 pillars: access to finance, access to markets, development of better framework conditions, new technologies and social innovation, and the international dimension of social economy actors. We have made good progress, but there are still a number of measures that we announced and that need to be implemented. We are currently working on finalising all this work so that the remaining measures will be implemented next year at the latest. Given all this work, we think that it would be premature to launch an additional action plan for the social economy at this stage. We want to first deliver what we have promised, and then let us see if more needs to be done. We are relying on the support of our informal task force on social economy and social enterprises, involving a number of Commission services. Honourable Members, once again, we fully agree with you on the importance of the social economy for Europe. The Commission adopted this week the public procurement package, and it will help also to boost social economy and social enterprises. We will continue to work with all stakeholders to ensure that the voice of social economy is heard across the whole Europe. We want to see more enterprises and more innovations change lives. Thank you.
Dankeschön,
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we have the spokesman for the group, starting with the European People's Party group spokeswoman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Madam Commissioner for her information. And I agree with the measures that she mentioned. I want to remind that social economy is an area of entrepreneurship that takes up different forms in different member states. Generally, we can say that its characteristic is that all the generated profits are reinvested into their own business. And what's important for the society is the inclusion and helping the inclusion of people in our society. The 2015 Council conclusions say that social economy supports the achievement of many key targets of the European Union, and it has done much better during the economic crisis than other parts of the economy. Social enterprises grow in number, and we know of 2 million of them that provide 14.5 million jobs across the EU. I believe that we all know this or that social enterprise. They include people who are vulnerable and create good conditions for the inclusion. And I also want to stress the role of the churches and their caritative work all over Europe. I think that we should support the voluntary initiatives of the companies, and we do not need any action plan.
Für die Fraktion der Europäischen Konservativen.
For the European Conservative Group, Mr. Dzhambazki, for a minute and a half.
Thank you very much, Madam President, colleagues, Commissioner. When you talk about these action plans and the social aspect, you need to respond to one very important question. There's a real gap when it comes to remuneration. Those that live in the west of Europe and those that live in the east of Europe, those who live in the east have to leave their country and move to the west in order to earn a decent wage. That is what should be in your action plan. That is the type of measures you need to be thinking about. This is very difficult in terms of business. In Germany, there is legislation that is being adopted that goes against the rights of workers from Eastern Europe. France is doing the same thing, and Belgium as well. The workers from the east of Europe cannot benefit from the single market, and it's the Commission's role to ensure the respect of the fundamental freedoms. That is the task that you should be focusing on. There are differences in terms of transport, renovation, buildings, all of these things that Western companies are doing is simply a hidden form of protectionism. That's what we should be focusing on in the future, talk about these questions.
Now on behalf of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, Mrs. Bilbao, for 1 minute. Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner. Thank you for all your efforts. I think the action plan that this question refers to is not an option anymore. It's an obligation. The social economy in the Basque Country is one of the key explanations for why we've done better in the crisis than the whole of the Spanish economy. It is better at creating jobs. It encourages the use of talent in companies. It encourages sustainable, smart growth. It puts positive value into the rest of the economy, and it offers hope. And another way of using profits by giving capital back its role of a servant of society, and not the other way about. So there needs to be a clear fiscal treatment for this at a European level, for the social economy in all its forms. At the moment, this is a real obstacle in the way of a method of doing business and growing a business which could offer a lot for the development in 2020.
Für die Fraktion
For the Confederal Group of the United European Left, Nordic Green Left, Mrs. Verja, for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. First of all, I would like to thank Jens Nilsson, because it's thanks to him that this is on the agenda. This is a debate on the social economy and not social enterprises. Yes, the social economy sector is an important one that doesn't get the recognition it should. 2 million social economy enterprises, 14.5 million people, and 8% of the EU GDP, and strong resilience against the crisis, as Mrs. Bilbao has just said. These enterprises are cooperatives, mutual societies, associations, foundations, and social enterprises. But they're not just SMEs, Madam Commissioner. They're not just SMEs. We're talking about enterprises of different sizes, and their activities aren't purely social, and they're not just help vulnerable people, even though a lot of them have social goals. They exist in all sectors of economy. This confusion, whether it is on purpose or not, shouldn't lead to big companies carry out this social washing. Now, there are certain bonds have thrown up a lot of question marks, and there's a need for clarification. Now, the most fragile companies at this time, when there isn't public money or very little public money, need new funding options, but there have to be guarantees, and they need to be able to access the right European funds. Once again, I'm going to say that it's extremely important to come up with a statute that would be the same for all others. It's what we call in English personal companies. This kind of statute would not be a silver bullet, but it would help the companies have recognition of their specific nature, and that they wouldn't find themselves watered down or disappearing in the general model, especially when carrying out their cross-border activities, and especially when they want to go out onto the international stage. It is a way of protecting their special character. These kind of companies think about the long term and about reinvesting profits, and not just short-term profits and the rate of return. They promote social innovation an economic innovation, and they create a lot of jobs. This sector plays a very important role in promoting a different kind of model which is more inclusive and more sustainable in the European Union and in the rest of the world, because you yourself have said how important these enterprises are on the international stage. So we need the right kind of framework. So, Madam Commissioner, the time has come to put forward an ambitious plan on the social economy. And we have to make sure that we protect the diversity of these enterprises. I would like to know why the time is not right, which is what you just said. So many suggestions have come forward, and your proposals fall short of our expectations. The time has come to act for social economy because it deserves it. Thank you.
Europa der Nationen und der Freiheit.
On behalf of the Europe of Nations and Freedom, Mrs. Miller, for 2.5 minutes.
Madame la Présidente, mes chers collègues.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Colleagues, the question that's been asked to the Commission about the promotion of social economy companies and a European action plan, we have a new number of comments on this point. Let me mention 4 of them. This is very effective in terms of tackling unemployment and avoiding leaving Europeans behind. What we're seeing is the perverse effects of globalization and 70 years of European construction, and this is independently of the recurring economic crises. So really, what's in our best interest here is each member state structures their social economy based on their own characteristics. Secondly, having a European action plan cannot be done without a clear definition of the statute of social economy companies. If we look at the French legal base, for example, they have to respond to 4 different properties with regards to distribution of profits of participative management, the way in which they develop their activities, and the legal status of their funding as well. Now, it's a very important source of funding. As we heard, 8% of EU GDP. There can be significant tax advantages, and actually this can benefit mutual companies, the banking sector, as well as sporting associations and healthcares. Now, this, in some cases, can be for tens of millions of euros of turnover for certain companies with huge turnover. So we want to avoid these kinds of abuses of the system. Thirdly, when we look at some of these large companies, due to digitalization and globalization, this is a very important sector. So each member state will have to incorporate this as one of their priorities and be inventive as to all the different forms these types of companies can take. Finally, it's very clearly something which falls under sovereign member state competences. Therefore, putting in place a European social economy is just creating another form of multinationals who are just hiring those who are the poorest, and that's not the type of cost we want. Thank you.
Nun kommen wir zu den weiteren.
Now we come to the other speakers, starting with Mrs. Zander for 1.5 minutes.
Présidente, Madame la Commissaire, chers collègues.
Commissioner, Madam President, colleagues, in 2014 here in Strasbourg, more than 2,000 social entrepreneurs launched an appeal for the social economy to play a bigger role in the future of Europe. Today, 3 years on, their appeal doesn't seem to have been heard because the Commission is dragging its feet in proposing a real action plan for the social economy. So we should now be taking on the Strasbourg Declaration, and we should be supporting this kind of business which puts the human element at the center. There are several points here. First of all, we need to stress the importance of cooperatives in agriculture. The Commission should give a full role to producer organizations in its new common agricultural policy. That way they will be able better to defend and to get value, added value from their products. Secondly, we should look at the financing of this kind of business. The new social partnership for finance that we approved a month ago, should allow us to do that. Thirdly, with the platform economy, we need to consider the strong solidarity economy, which is actually cooperative only in name, and allows them to get around tax laws. So we need proposals from the Commission, which I hope will be at the same level as the energy that so many millions of Europeans give to this sector of the economy.
Ne mogu razumjeti kako Komisija ignorira činjenicu.
I don't understand why the Commission ignores the fact that 8% of European GDP and the 14.5 million of employees in this sector do not deserve an action plan. We must never forget the synergies that may be created with what the European regions and cities can contribute to Europe. They can also participate in the social economy. They already do. And my experience shows how important it is that we involve at the local and regional level the state and also the European Union in solving the problems affecting the social economy. I will just single out one problem, which is the method of financing and also cheaper financing of enterprises, and I think that the Commission has an important role to play in that.
Dankeschön. Frau
Thank you, Mrs. Jezrovieska, for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, our data show that social economy is alive and well, in spite of the crisis whose results we can still see in some countries. This sector employs over 40 million people and is responsible for 8% of Europe's GDP growth. Social economy creates jobs and helps us integrate people in the labor market and in the society. We can see unemployment going down, and in some countries of Europe we are dealing with natural unemployment. This means you can't go any lower than that. But in some countries unemployment is still high, especially among women and other groups of people. And this is great potential, untapped potential. I'm convinced that social economy would and could help us activate and integrate those people. This would be to the benefit of the European economy. We must therefore update our industrial economy to take into account social economy. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön, Herr Radoš.
Thank you, Mr. Radoš, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Commissioner. I'd like to thank Mr. Nielsen and the colleagues from the Intergroup on Social Economy for this initiative. And let me also thank Mr. Nielsen that he didn't use the word neoliberal when he spoke about liberal economy. It is used inaccurately quite often. Among the goals which are sought to be fulfilled in this action plan, I would like to single out social cohesion. To me personally, this is the most important objective. In the modern world and in the EU, we're losing solidarity, both collective and individual solidarity, and this is why we need to show solidarity to those who want to be integrated in society and on the labor market. This is why I endorse the position of the colleagues in this interpellation, and I would like to request of the Commission to start implementing the action plan in the shortest time possible. Thank you.
Dankeschön, Herr Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for 1.5 minutes.
I agree completely with the social economy model, and I'm glad that my government does the same, and indeed they have a plan to extend it based on 4 foundations. Several Irish social enterprises work with marginalised members of our society, including persons with disabilities, to provide them with employment they cannot find elsewhere. And I was pleased during the summer to attend what's called a social farming enterprise, where farmers invite people with disabilities onto their farm to work on a regular basis. And this was on the farm in my own area, cousin of my own, George Kelly from Beaufort, County Kerry. And this is a great example of integrating people. One area where this could also work is, especially in Ireland, is in the area of wind farms. There is opposition to wind farms now because many people feel that individuals are getting the profits, but the whole society has to carry the burden of noise, etc., which they associate with it. But if it was based on a social economy model, then they would all benefit, and I think that is something that we would really encourage. And I'm glad to say, as a rapporteur for the Renewable Energy Directive, we're including local energy communities in the clean energy package. That certainly could be worthwhile. One area where it's very successful in Ireland is the dairy co-ops. This is where farmers actually own the co-op, so the co-op works for the producers, the profits can be shared, they can come together to buy equipment, etc., and it works extremely well, and I think this is something we should be encouraging more. So thank you very much, and thanks to the Commissioner for her good words in the beginning.
Herr Kelly, Herr Jakovčić möchte.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Jakovčić has a blue card for you. He wants to ask a question. Will you accept? Good. Mr. Jakovčić.
Vielen Dank. Poštovani kolega Kelly.
Mr. Kelly, you spoke of your experience, or at least about how persons with disabilities can participate in the social economy in Ireland. I have also a lot of experience in that respect. So are there in Ireland special benefits for companies who hire a larger number of persons with disabilities, or is this only based on doing business with persons with disabilities? Do they have also tax breaks, or are there any benefits at the regional, national level, or are there none?
It's actually part of the plan by the government to extend the social model, so there would be tax breaks, etc., and benefits for them. And indeed, in the social economy, especially the social farming that I mentioned, the Minister has actually given us some help, financial help, to encourage this and to actually expand it out further. So yes, the answer is yes, but there's probably need for more. And especially when people see the benefits, I think it will be easier to convince government and others to put further finance there. So thank you for your question.
Dankeschön, Herr Kelly. Nun kommen wir zum Catch the Eye.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Now we come to the Catch the Eye procedure with one question for Mr. Mamikins for 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to my friend and colleague, Mr. Nilsson, that he has put this issue on the board. It is not often that here in the European Parliament we speak about social economy, even though I believe this to be a cornerstone of us. That is what makes us different from all the other countries in the third world. We have always aimed at helping the weaker party and not putting barriers in front of the strongest. We are not a type of North Korea or the former USSR economy model or some kind of splitting of issues. No. The first issue for us is the responsibility, and not only the responsibility for the employer but also from the employee. And it is good the Commission is working towards this aim. I do not want to criticize the Commission. I know that you have worked a lot towards this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Jourova, Commissioner, you have the floor.
Madam President, honourable members, thank you for your contributions to this important debate, and also thank you, Mr. Nilsson, for this question. If you allow me to be a little bit personal, I myself worked 5 years for the municipal office, and I recognise very strongly that it is very important to develop at the local level, and not only at the local level, social economy, and to open the possibilities for the people to start and keep entrepreneuring. I stressed at the beginning in the opening remarks that we as a Commission have recognised fully the importance of the European social model and of our social market economy. We recognise that social economy is an instrument that brings solidarity and innovative answers to societal challenges that we face, and also to repeat again that the Commission has launched a number of new actions for the social economy as part of the 2016 communication on Europe's next leaders, the Startup and Scale Up initiative. Let me stress again that we are focusing on 5 main pillars and actions. Among others, it is access to finance, access to markets, developing framework conditions, and also using and developing new technologies and innovations. We will follow closely the developments of social economy and social enterprises in Europe. We are committed to provide the appropriate policy for the social economy to help Europe achieve more and cohesive and inclusive society. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. The debate is thus closed. The minutes of this sitting will be submitted to the Parliament for approval at the beginning of the next sitting. If there are no objections, I will close today's session, and I shall forward the resolutions adopted to the